Hi, everyone. So way back in the early 2000s, soon after Wikipedia was launched and available to everyone in the world, a theory started to go around the internet. And the theory said that if you picked any random Wikipedia article and then clicked on the first link of that article, and then continued to do that for every subsequent page that you came up on. So clicked on the first link of that page, you'd eventually land on the philosophy Wikipedia article. And so it was a very interesting theory. So it spread really fast around the internet, and for many years after that, it became the subject of many experiments and games and icebreaker sessions until around 2016, when a group of researchers said, enough of this theory, we are going to test the hypothesis and disprove this theory. And they came to the conclusion that not only is it true, it is true for a vast majority of articles, 97.3% to be exact. And for the 3% or less that it isn't true for, the reason is at some point it loops back to one of the pages that you'll have already clicked on before. So you're stuck in an infinite loop. So that's super interesting, right? And because I'm a very curious cat, I set out to test this theory with 5 different topics that I considered very random for the internet, but known to me. So I picked 5 things. I picked Kenya because I'm Kenyan, I'm from Kenya. I picked Spotify because that's where we are for this event today. I also picked accessibility because that's the grand theme of the day. It's Global Accessibility Awareness Day. I also picked tomatoes because I just really like those. And I picked Yoda because I'm a big fan and Star Wars Day was just the other week. And so 5 very random stats on Wikipedia, and all of them led me down to the philosophy page on Wikipedia. Yoda took 10 steps to get there. Kenya and tomatoes took 11 steps or 11 clicks. The Spotify page took me 17 clicks to get to philosophy, and accessibility took me 22 clicks. And so without dragging that analogy further than it needs to go, I think one thing that translates well to most, if not all of us in the room today, is that no matter what organization you work in or what area of your organization you work in, if someone was to use that as an entry point, and if they were to dig down to the foundational levels of your work, it would be really good if they found an accessibility-centric approach to your work, right? But this is also aspirational, right? I think most of us would agree that we are not there yet, much as we would like to be, which makes what I'm about to talk about very interesting. So how do we scale accessibility in the different organizations that we work in? And I'm going to tell you a few stories from Spotify because that's where I have experience from. And hopefully this wisdom of experience will translate in some ways and encourage conversation in our break times, or give you at least some things to take away and try in your different organizations. And I didn't introduce myself yet. I am Sarah. I am an engineer here at Spotify. And together with Audrey Auclair and Sean Bent over there at the back, and Tamash, who's not in the room with us today, the 4 of us make up the accessibility team at Spotify. Spotify, whose mandate and mission is to bring millions of creatives closer to the billions of fans that they have and unlock creativity for them. Millions, billions. These are really big numbers. Numbers that also the World Health Organization uses when it mentions disability. So the World Health Organization says 1 in every 6 people in the world has a disability, which is over 1.6 billion people in the world. So in addition to our desire to make the Spotify experience a really high quality and accessible one that doesn't leave anyone behind, even just by numbers alone, billions of people have disabilities. And so the work and mandate that the accessibility team has is very near and critical to Spotify's mission. So there's 4 of us on this screen, but I'd be remiss not to mention that there's a very vibrant community of over 500 Spotifyers today who are hired to do different work at Spotify, but who are also very proactive and engaged in accessibility work. And they help us reach far and wide as far as all Spotify work goes. And this is how our mandate is able to carry very well in the organization. So how did we get here? Here where we have a team whose full-time mandate is accessibility, here where there's over 500 engaged Spotifyers doing this in their free time and also bringing this back to their work. So Spotify is turning 20 next year, which is very exciting for us. And I think if I went back in time to the date that Spotify launched, I could easily find stories about accessibility considerations that were made way back when. But I have 15 minutes, so I'll start a little bit closer, around 2016. And this story starts with 2 colleagues at Spotify who had an accessibility issue they wanted to resolve, and they hacked on it, and then they roped in more people, and it became bigger and wider discussions, and eventually it landed us the creation of this first accessibility community at Spotify. So people from different domains whose common interest is accessibility. And these people talked a lot about different pieces of work that needed to be done. They drove efforts and tried to influence work in different ways at Spotify for many years. And eventually, it culminated in a company-wide initiative around accessibility in 2020. The goal of this company-wide effort was to, first of all the sticky issues that had been raised, resolve them, right? But then figure out a more sustainable solution for accessibility work approach at Spotify. And so at the end of this company-wide drive, the first accessibility team at Spotify was formed in 2021. In the same year, Spotify leadership made a public commitment to disability inclusion via Valuable 500. And that just catapulted the work and efforts of accessibility, and all of a sudden we were in as many, that's me, and we're back. We were in as many discussions and product development work that needed to happen. And that was a lot of work, and it kept us busy. So I didn't mention any of that. But then something happened in 2024 that I think is really important. Our team moved as close to the design function at Spotify as we possibly could be. And so why is that an important piece of information? So there is a philosophy called shift left. And if you haven't heard about it, summarily, if you were to think about every stage of the product development life cycle, and on one end, you had ideation and also experimentation, prototyping. And on this other extreme end, on the right, you had testing and QA and launch into production. A lot of the accessibility issues are currently fixed at the point where something has launched, and then someone reports an issue, then you're like, okay, not Spotify, but a majority of organizations are like, okay, we'll find room to fix this for you. But according to IBM, this costs 95 times as much as if the developer had considered this work at the point where they were first building the thing. If that was a one-time cost, then it cost 95 times as much to fix those same issues in production. And then a complementing study says that about 67% of all accessibility issues can easily be caught and solved for if we considered them and worked them into design, 67%. So it benefits all of us if we not only bake in accessibility at every stage of the product development life cycle, But if we shift left as far back and as early as possible in the product development process, so that if you wake up and say, aha, I have an idea, if it's possible to bake in accessibility into that statement, that's when you start. So this is why it's a big win that the accessibility team sits next to the design function at Spotify. So what has this team done since 2021, 7 years ago, when we became a fully fledged team? I did mention the community, but a big thing, if you've worked with community, you know, it's easy to set up a community, but what keeps people coming back if there's co-ownership of the effort? And I think the education pillar is a very big part of why we've been able to move forward very quickly. So what happens here is we have a course, a 4-part course at Spotify that whittles down to very specific domains. So we get people in a room on a Monday and we talk about foundational concepts of accessibility. So we start from a shared point of understanding. What is accessibility? Why does it matter? What are we losing out on by missing out on all the work that we need to do? And then we set people out on their different paths. So designers get their own challenges, mobile developers, iOS and web get their own, and web engineers get their own. So for 4 days, they work through accessibility issues that are specific to their domain. And at the end of the 4 days, they come back together and they collaborate on a bigger issue and discuss what they'd have done to fix it. And by the time they go back, we've mimicked the environment they have in their everyday work. So they're able to bring this back to their teams, not only to fix issues, but to drive and influence conversation in the right direction. And then we rely on data quite a bit to tell the stories that we have and to influence product roadmaps at Spotify. And then we back this up using audits from third-party organizations like BarrierBreak, who do extensive checks across all our experiences that Spotify has on different surfaces, mobile and web. Then we're able to prioritize that with different teams and have them fix it. And we're back. Yeah, so in the interest of time, what have we learned in the last 7 years of work? Thank you. So we've learned that accessibility work is very critical, which means because it's not a nice to have, investing in it is a must. So that means that much as Audrey and Sean and Tamash and I are backed up by this over 500 community of really engaged people are there, we also have to invest extra effort. So how do we make sure that we're not missing certain elements of our experience and, you know, like the inaccessibility in those? And so BarrierBreak helps us with that once or twice a year with the audits that they do for us. On the other hand, there are experiences where users will report, or we will find on Reddit or wherever, where people are talking about an inaccessible experience. And if we check in our test environments, we're not able to replicate or reproduce these issues. So then we work with a company called Make It Fable. They hire people who depend on assistive technologies for navigating the internet every day. And so we give them these scenarios, and they're able to record themselves navigating the experience. And when you watch these videos with engineers in the room, something magical happens. So the video is playing, and someone is suffering through an experience that all of us could have sworn should be working. And you can see everyone hunkered down on their machine and want to fix this in real time. And we do this as extensively as we need to. Fable is very responsive and gives us really good content. And so we're able to fix that, not just once, but keep that in archive as an example for other engineering teams that encounter similar issues in the future. So we're building an education bank to also help people, you know, through self-serve learning experiences, and that benefits everyone. And as I finish, because my laptop wants me to, We are guided by the World Wide Web's consortium's guidelines on accessibility. And these are very strict about what an accessible experience should look like, right? So we never compromise on that. If I come to talk to you about an inaccessible experience, we will not negotiate on what, the end experience needs to be, but what we will be very open about is the approach that we will use to get to that experience. Because teams have designed very unique experiences on the Spotify app. They are very knowledgeable about that. And so we can't lift WCAG guidelines and apply them as they are for experiences that are very niche and specific to us. So we are very flexible on the approaches and the timelines, but strict on the end quality that is expected. And then you won't always know anything. You will know stuff, but you won't know everything. So expect to dive into the unknowns to have an informed opinion. So you're almost always in class, right? And work with different people in your community to figure things out, especially as innovation is core to everything that technology is about. As I finish, for Wikipedia, all roads seem to lead to philosophy, and for every one of us in this room, the goal is that all roads should lead to accessibility. The asterisk is because we will almost never be there, but we have to make sure that we keep doing the work. And as Tamash, the member of our team who isn't here, likes to remind us and others at Spotify, progress over perfection is how we get there. Thank you.